Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC College Football Podcast, hosted by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am their host, Ethan Orfe, as I am every Monday whenever you decide to come and listen to us. And it has not been the fastest week of news cycle for college football, aside from typical college football playoff shenanigans. So the national title, by the time this comes out, will be on Monday, and it will be playing. So I have no idea who's going to win just yet, but I'm going to be putting my 2 cents on that at some point in the podcast. But for the most part, we're just going to be doing some looks around the actual CFB, and one of those things that we're going to look at, as I'm starting today off with, is the idea of low attendance numbers. Well, it's not really an idea; it's some metrics, some studies. So, college football is having a dropping attendance rate. I read a Sports Illustrated article the other day that seemed to be talking about something that I've honestly noticed in my own collegiate experience. So I went to college at a D2 school, so University of West Georgia, go West, go Wolves. And I noticed that a lot of people didn't come out to games then. You would think that because the place is in Carrollton, Georgia, which is not the biggest area. It's about an hour away from literally everything in the metro Atlanta area. So when I tell you that the school is very, very big in that area of the west side of the state, it is very big. It's one of the more popular schools to go to, and it just happens to be a place where the football team, for the most part, was actually pretty productive for most of my time being there. And even when they were winning at the peak of their powers, a lot of people didn't show up to games. And it's different for Division II because you have to compete with what people really want to watch is Division I and pro sports. So, of course, they play on Saturdays, and that is usually the time when University of Georgia will be playing. So they never want to compete with when Georgia's playing because then nobody would come to the game, right? So they would make the game super early, 1 o'clock kickoffs, and it would just be nobody there. They'd have tailgates. They've tried everything, trying to incorporate different people involved and getting people into games, bringing Greek life involved so that way more people would come out due to the fraternities and sororities, and maybe the student sections will be filled and sustain the level of people that they would get at maybe a homecoming game or something like that. And to be honest, it just nothing has really worked thus far on that end of the day. And maybe that's just a societal thing. You never really know. Like, people are changing, and as society changes, people generally like to blame technology, cell phones, streaming for declines of people going out to games. And I don't know, it's just college football is a very, very unique commodity, right? It's all riched in, just like in this article written by Charlotte Wilder. It's a place where it's rich in tradition, it's rich in history, and you would think it would keep its place in people's minds and hearts. And I think people still care about college football. I just think that it's in a different way. And especially if you're not on a consistent winning basis. This would be one thing if we were talking about Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson, which they were in the article talking about their decrease in people coming out to games, especially students. And they were seeing 5% decreases and things like that. But imagine the schools that aren't winning the national titles. So they may be bowl game eligible, so they go to bowl games, but who has the time to travel to bowl games? It's not like in the later times where people would rent out buses and they'd all crowd around and come in and things like that to go out on road games or in neutral party games where the place is played in some nice place, I don't know, in New Mexico City or even Hawaii. Any of those type of bowls just doesn't happen anymore. So when you have people who are students and they don't have the time, or they're trying to be preoccupied doing other things, and a lot of people work, it's hard to be a student and be financially kind of in difficult situations. So you got to be mindful of that aspect too. So students have to pay for stuff. They still need to be able to live and function. So it's not just school that is going to be able to get them through. They still need to have some sort of income to be able to invest in other things and be able to actually live their life. So a lot of students work on the weekends. A lot of students go home on the weekends to do work or to help their family out around the house. And it's not really all about that. Everybody's college is not all about that college experience being the same anymore, in my opinion. So what does that mean for football? I think college football will be fine in the grand scheme of things, but they may have to start marketing different ways to get students to come back to the games in a more complete sense. Because of course, students that really, really love the game will find a way to make themselves around the game. Like for me, I started out in sports broadcasting for radio at my college radio station, and I would go out every Saturday I could when there was a ball game. And we do a tailgate show. We would do sideline reporting. I just love the atmosphere of being around college football. And I love following the football team. I love talking football. And I love being in the atmosphere. And before I was part of the radio station, I would go to every home game and be a part of that section of people. Even sometimes when my freshman year, I went and sat on the visitor stands for almost a whole year. Not really noticing that there was the home side was, of course, the bigger one. But the visitors typically would have more interesting people to kind of talk to, and it was fun to banter. And once I got out of that lifestyle, of course, I started sitting back on the home side and enjoyed many, many games of football that way, and then getting involved even further and being on part of the sideline and recording stats and highlights and things of that nature, and just really being enriched in the game of college football, even at the smaller D2 level, is an experience that I thank every day that I got. But not everybody feels that way about the sport. Some people just like to have a good time, and sometimes it's even about the preparation for the game that seems to be more important than the actual game itself. So the whole rituals of pre-gaming, tailgates, barbecuing outside of the truck, inviting people over, the alumni come out, and then when everybody goes into the game, it really can be a hit or miss. If the game is not exciting and it's not hot, it's not a hot commodity, it's not a back and forth affair, people get bored. Attention spans get wary, and then all of a sudden, people are ready to leave the stands, or worse, your team just isn't all that in a bag of chips. And when that happens, it's really tough to keep fair weather fans or keep fans that aren't really into football from a deeper sense, like they actually enjoy watching it. Even if their team isn't the best, they want to know why, and they want to see things, and they want to see what teams are doing against them, and really understand and feel a part of their team. People don't have time for that. If the team isn't winning and they're not having a good time, they'll leave. And that's really just the end all be all of that, in my opinion. So it's hard. It's like any other commodity. If you're not a good product, people won't show up. And when you are a good product and people don't show up, that's kind of the problem. And you got to find creative solutions to kind of bring people back to the stands and back to the stadiums. Maybe it's about cheaper ticket prices, or maybe like what the SEC did and keeping letting people buy alcoholic beverages at the stadium. I don't really know exactly what the major solution is, but there definitely needs to be able to find one, because they're one of the many I guess industries or many sports products that have kind of declined in people coming into attendance. So the NFL has had issues like that. The NHL had a little bit of a dip, but other than that, the NBA had a increase of recent time, and that's kind of been the anomaly out of the American sports. So with that said, we're going to go into a quick break, and coming right after that, we're going to get into Mississippi State and who they just hired to be their head coach. That's coming up.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, so last time we were talking about college football attendance having some issues, and maybe just really more of a commentary of just my personal experience with that, as solutions are hard to come by in these sort of instances, but it's interesting to talk about and to look at a lens from a forever changing and evolving society, especially when it comes to the lens of the youth, the young people, the people who are in college. I mean, there's old people in college too, older people. It's never too late to go back and learn. Anyway, what we're learning about today is about Mike Leach, hired by Mississippi State. And to be honest, I don't think the masses are sure how they're supposed to feel about this hire. And I'm also one of those people as well, just because of the whole idea that it was probably Lane Kiffin that, just like everybody else, was looking at to get a hire. So Lane Kiffin went to Ole Miss. So what did Mississippi State end up having to deal with? And that would to be the second fiddle, in my opinion. What do you get with hiring someone like Mike Leach? You'll get a nice offense. You'll get somebody who you'll get a really, really enriched passing game and a little bit of a kind of an underwhelming running game. And defense is kind of a second thought afterwards. And that's really it. You're going to get some stats. You're going to have some exciting football. You're going to have some people that are going to show up to the games and come and see a surprise. So you're probably not going to be in the runnings of the SEC title game anytime soon. And to be honest, I'm not sure if that's a knock against the head coach. It's really hard to compete in the SEC and to go to the title game. It's very carousel rolls, and especially in the West, where it's so competitive, where you have the Alabama, the LSU, the Ole Miss, you have the Texas A&M now. You have all of these sort of programs that are high profile, get a lot of good recruits on a yearly basis, and they're always out for blood for each other. So when you throw Mississippi State involved in all of this, it's just so difficult to see them really pulling out 7 or 8 wins at the most. And I'm not really sure what this hire means. So I've been saying for the past few weeks now that coaches need to have more time, in my opinion, before all of a sudden the axe is thrown, just because of the state of the sport of college football. and how the coaching carousel can kind of be, or sometimes the stop at the coaching carousel and people wanting to get off the ride can be a little bit misleading, and sometimes people are not looking at what they have and always looking at what they want, because everybody sees the pretty new toy, and you can't always have the pretty new toy. But it doesn't mean that the toy that you have at home is a bad one. You love that toy. You love that toy until you see the other kid come around with the new toy at school, and you want to have that, and you're jealous. And that's just as far as I can take this analogy. But essentially, it's like the whole Michigan, Ohio State thing. People want Harbaugh gone because he can't get past Ohio State, and that's a fair criticism to have, that he hasn't been able to get past them, and he kind of put himself in his own way by saying what he did when he first got hired on for the job. But as we've been seeing for the past few years, college football fans, Ohio State is a top class program, gets top class recruits, and has always been in the top 5 for the past 3 or 4 years under Urban Meyer and now under Mr. Day. So when we have a team like not Ohio State, Mississippi State, who is hiring someone like Mike Leach, who got a lot of records at Washington State and did all these things, but at the end of the day really didn't bring anything, didn't win anything significant, lost a lot of his bowl games and appearances, and didn't really shake the rattles of college football. What do you really have to look forward to in this hire? And to be honest, I don't think there's that much, but you may have a fun program that might be able to make some upsets. And that's what, in essence, what people really enjoy about college football, aside from being, storylines, winnings, all that sort of thing, looking at draft projections. There's a lot of stuff to like in college football. One of the bigger things is seeing a team that everybody counts out. Everybody is looking down on them. Oh, Alabama versus Auburn. There's no way Auburn pulls this out in the Iron Bowl, and then we have the kick six. Or, oh my gosh, we're seeing so many different outcomes to where every time in the season, there's some team in the midseason where somebody is having a tough time. So like Penn State has been having rough times in the middle of the season where they might lose to, I think they lost to Pittsburgh a few years back, where it was a real shocker and they got put toe to toe. College football has a lot of parity in the middle of the pack. So there's always chances for upsets, and sometimes it's really more about just matchups rather than just looking at the ranking numbers and putting locks in. So this is one of those times where he coached a middle of the pack team in Washington State, and he's probably going to be coaching another middle of the pack team in Mississippi State. But if he makes the middle of the pack team fun, is it a bad hire? Will it bring people in the seats? Will people want to come see the product? And I think at the end of the day, people will still want to come see a Mississippi State football team. And I don't think that, even though they're going to have problems recruiting a little bit because they're in the SEC, and the SEC West is just so tough in that region to bring home recruits. But at the end of the day, this is what they have, and they got to work with what they got. And I don't think he's necessarily a bad coach. He's fine. And sometimes the fine coach is all right, because you can't hit the home run 100% of the time. And you're not really going to ever hit the home run 100% of the time. You get lucky every now and again. You find a diamond in the rough every now and again that wants to come coach your program or come be a part of something and make your program into something. But it's really rare. You'll find times that people who build themselves up already don't want to do that over again. They want to go to a program to where not only is their name already established and they have a resume to back it up, they want to improve. They want to improve their legacy. They want to improve their namesake and go coach somebody even more important. So that's why someone like Urban Meyer, who was at Florida, when he left, he went to Ohio State. And that is why when you look at people like Kirby Smart, when he was at Alabama, he didn't want just any other job. He wanted the job, coaching Georgia. And when you look at someone like Dabo Swinney, who understands that where else is he going to be able to coach, you know? So he signs that big deal and stays with Clemson. It's really time to really wake up about this whole thing. And I think we all, as a society, have to understand that you can't hit the home run all the time. You never will. However, if you can get a double, that's not too bad. Not everybody can win. And, you know, Mississippi State, their roster wasn't set up to compete with the Alabamas, the newfound offensive team in LSU, the Clemson's, the Ohio States in the first place. That wasn't where they were at when they let go of their previous head coach, and you see that through the record. So you shouldn't expect anything less. I wouldn't think you should expect anything less than what they did, because that's the floor, I guess, that what this hire means. The hire means the floor is what happened last season. And now they can only look anywhere but up. And honestly, anything better than what they've had for the past 2 years is probably the sweetest deal that you can ask for. You just have to know the reality of the current situation in the current realm of college football. And that's really all I have to say on that piece. Good luck to Mr. Leach, and I hope that he's able to really do something down there in a tough SEC conference. So we're going to come back after this break and talk a little bit more about some SEC conversation as we talk about Kirby Smart and what Georgia has to really try and accomplish next season. That's coming up.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, so leading back in after the break, we were just talking about Mike Leach being hired by Mississippi State. And now we're going to go into a team that has seemingly found their head coach for the last few years, but each time they've gotten to either close to the apex or at the apex of the pinnacle of the end of the road, but have not been able to finish. And that is Georgia. Kirby Smart. What's next? How do they get past this forever breaching wall that seems to be affecting a lot of things within the mindset of Georgia sports fans, Atlanta sports fans? It just seems to be similar things that go on in Atlanta sports talking circles that some people think the state is cursed, the city is cursed. I don't really know. But aside from what I really see, what I see is a team that has the recruits, the talent, the skill level to make it all the way. They're in the weaker conference of the SEC as of right now. They easily control that conference. They have been for the past few years, and I am a bit concerned by why this ends up being a problem for them to advance into farther parts of the college football playoffs. Why is it hard for them to get in? And granted, this year it was pretty easy to see why it was difficult for them to get in. And many people argue that, Georgia should have gotten another shot and they shouldn't have dropped this far because what we were able to see with Oklahoma versus LSU. And I don't know. I don't know if that's fair or not, because when Georgia had the chance to play LSU handled business in similar fashion. They weren't able to stop Joe Burrow. Neither could Oklahoma. It just seemed that Oklahoma had a harder time not stopping him. And to be honest, I think most people expected Oklahoma to have a hard time trying to slow down Joe Burrow and the gang anyway. So in reality, where's the next angle for this? What does Kirby Smart do? How do we look at Kirby Smart now? And I think Kirby Smart is a brilliant head coach. I think he is a great head coach for the program. I think he does I think he does UGA a great service of being there and being the face of their program and being there for a long time. I don't think he's in the same situation that maybe a Harbaugh would be in, just because of he didn't sell himself up to be this messiah, to be this bringer of championships. Instantly, he didn't make it seem like he was this guru that was going to be able to bring all this success. He's brought success. It's not reached to the ultimate level of success that one would like, but he's been successful. He's gotten them to many bowl games. He's gotten to the championships in the SEC multiple years. He's gone to the national title game and almost had it won. He won it in the first half. They had him in the first half, but he's just done a lot, and he just hasn't reached that apex yet. And to be honest, this is what I believe separates him from Harbaugh, which is Harbaugh honestly just doesn't have the talent to get to that point. Kirby Smart does. And I think at a certain point, if Kirby Smart doesn't make it back to the national title, a lot of people are going to start gathering the firewood, start getting the roasters ready, and, plopping it right, just pushing it through the sand, right underneath that seat. And it's getting warmer and warmer. They're turning up the heat. Like, how these newer cars have warm seats, heated seats to where you can adjust the temperature. And that, it's a nice setting in cars. And when Kirby Smart's sitting in his car, all of the UGA alums and boosters and fans, even just college football fans across the nation, are going to start slowly turning up that button, slowly staking up the fire, slowly turning up the heat. And I don't know at what point does the criticism become fair. That I'm not sure. I think that if you have any critiques about him, it would be how they manage things in certain situations, especially on the offensive end. In the past few years, there have been games where they came out flat and they didn't look prepared to play, and they got outplayed. So that game against Tennessee, that game against Florida a few years back, and there's just some games where you see, I guess, the team not look like they did for X amount of weeks, and all of a sudden they lay a dud. And unlike pros, you can't lay a dud and say, okay, we have to regroup and we'll get back, and we're still 9-1, or we're still 7-1. We can make up for this. We're still one of the better teams in the state. Still one of the better teams in the nation. In college football, it's if you lose once, that could be your season. Especially if competition is high and the parity isn't as lopsided as it has been in the past few years in the top 5. They can't afford to lose. And they're fortunate to be in the SEC East where the competition is not as stiff. That's why when people say, oh, Alabama hasn't, they don't play anybody anymore, or the SEC is not what they used to be, and, they might make it, but to be honest, their schedule shouldn't mean as much. The SEC is still a top-tier conference. They still play top-tier opponents, and they play in the west part of the SEC. And that is tough. That is tough to go up against LSU every year. It is tough to go up against Ole Miss every year. It's tough to go up against Auburn every year, where they have a resurgence almost every 2 to 3 years, where they look like they could be one of the best teams in the country as well. And then, even then, sometimes they play outside of the conference, and they still find a way to get it done. And that's why people never doubt Nick Saban. That's why people never doubt Alabama. It's the same reason why people don't doubt Ohio State. It's the same reason why people don't doubt what's going on in Clemson, especially this year, where it looked like Clemson was not going to be what they have turned out to be all along in the early part of the season, because they had a scare in the beginning, and all of a sudden they got rolling and people stopped paying attention to them because they just said, oh, they're just winning against bad ACC teams. And to be fair, they were winning against bad ACC teams, but they were handling their business and they were winning and getting a rhythm going, and they got there. And that's all that matters in the world for a team that's already that good. Georgia is good, but they're not that good to where they can just take games off. Really, nobody in college football is that good to take games off, especially in a conference. Really, just they breed Sunday players. So you have to bring your A game all the time, and Georgia doesn't always bring their A game all the time. And if it happens again next year, fans are not going to be happy about this, and people are going to start chirping, and people are going to start murmuring. Same thing with not Mike Smith, because he used to coach the Falcons way back in the day, but Dan Quinn. Similar situations. They have a good year, they have a bad year. They have a good year, they have a bad year. They have a bad year, and then they get to the Super Bowl, and then another bad year, and then they have another year where it just looked like things were falling apart. And at the end of the day, people have been asking, maybe what's up with this Dan Quinn guy? And then they, the team rallies behind them. They go 5-2 in the last 7 games, and they salvage the season at some point. But they have to look at Dan Quinn next year, because he's brought back for just one more year, but you never really know. He could go in the middle of the season if things don't go well. And I think Kirby Smart might be heading in a similar direction if he doesn't get a handle on just how the team is viewed in the public eye, and just how they come out to certain games, and tendencies and things like that. So that's really all I have to say on that front. So we're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to get into some Trevor Lawrence talk, and that's coming up.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence. That's what we're about to talk about coming up out of this break. Trevor Lawrence. Apparently he is the next coming of Christ. I'm just trying to understand. People think he's this good, and I think he's really good. I just don't know if people are saying he's the best quarterback prospect ever seen in college football. And I'm not sure if that's the case. And if it is, what does that really mean for his transition to the pros? For me, I don't think it changes much. I think Trevor Lawrence will be really good. I just don't know if the hype is going to crush him or is going to strengthen him. It's going to sharpen him to be even better as a pro for when he does go in the draft next year. So Trevor Lawrence is his stats and the way he plays, and he is a revolutionary quarterback in this generation. In this last decade, he's one of the betters we've ever seen, and it just looks like he fits the mold of where the NFL is going. And that's why I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be a really good pro, and as long as he goes into the right setting. Now, let me preface, anybody can be a really good pro at this point, as long as the team, well, let me take that back. Not everybody can be a really good pro. You still have to put the work in. You still have to have the talent around you. There's a lot of things about football and success that are a lot of luck-based. You got to be in the right situation at the right time stuff. However, if those things do apply, Trevor Lawrence will be really good because I believe his skill floor to his ceiling is just so nice that he's just going to be able to understand the game, because the game has been able to, the pro game has changed so much to where it's not as hard of a transition for these guys who are able to move, be mobile in the pocket as far as pocket mobility, and being able to run it outside the pocket and use their athleticism to be able to make plays. And I think that's really important because the era of the pocket passer is slowly weeding itself out as the new age quarterback who is able to stretch plays out, maneuver out of the pocket, still look downfield, and if there's nothing there, they can pick up 15 yards because they're faster than your linebacker that can get out to them, or the linebacker's in coverage and they have an assignment and they don't know whether or not it's time to bail and go for the tackle or whatnot. That's hard for defenses to game plan around. And someone like Trevor Lawrence, who has some wheels and is able to really stress a defense out to the umpteenth degree in college football, somebody who is a good offensive mind can really take someone like him and really make his talents and his strengths really shine its brightest. So that's why I say it takes the right situation. Not every NFL front office, head coaching situation is the perfect situation for every young QB star. That's why you see always those jokes about when somebody who's projected to be number one, and then by week 9 of the NFL season, you'll see who the projected first pick might be, and the people will be starting fake rumors or real rumors that somebody might be staying back in another year in college because they just don't want to play for a team that is that bad. So you might have even seen the Bengals do this a little bit. Joe Burrow's never been one to talk about not wanting to play for the Bengals or not wanting to go to the draft. However, the Bengals looked really, really bad. And then they still look bad, but they had to reel it back in. They had to look competitive, because if you can't prove to somebody who's going to be coming into your organization that's supposed to be the face of your franchise that you're not going to try hard, even when you've secured things, it is not a good sign. It's not a good look. And NFL is not a place to where, you can clearly see somebody's tanking. You can for a little bit. We thought it was happening with Miami, to where it looked like they were clearly tanking. I don't think it was NBA level tanking to where, they're benching players and they're sitting guys out purposely and, putting bad lineups together and trading away people who might be a little too good for what they're trying to get for draft picks and stuff like that, which, technically they did. They did it with Minka Fitzpatrick. They did it with the running back that went to Arizona, and who was an Alabama product. And that's about it. But then they went on that five game stretch where they really were able to pull some things together, and they know they didn't get the first pick, but they're still a high draft pick but they showed promise. They showed that, the competency. And I think you still have to show that to a lot of these guys before they just go all out and say, yeah, I'm going to the draft and I would like to play for you. They're going to go to the draft because they understand that football is a short-windowed sport and you can't play it forever, and you got to capitalize when the money is hot. That's why Tua went. And the money is hot and the draft stock is high for Tua, just as it will be high for Trevor Lawrence, no matter what happens. So Trevor Lawrence, depending on the situation at hand, is going to probably be the number 1 overall pick between him and Justin Fields, depending on how their seasons go and what happens between that August and later on in that spring. So what does that really mean for somebody who's coming out of a draft and doesn't really have much to prove anymore as far as college football is concerned? Because I felt this way about Jameis when James Winston was coming out for the draft, and his rookie season was incredible. He was having one of the craziest rookie seasons we've ever seen. He had all these expectations. Then the last 2 years, things started to teeter off, and his accuracy was his decision-making rather was a question coming into the draft, and it's always been a question ever since. He's been too pick-happy. That's never changed, but I don't think it ever affected his draft stock in getting drafted, and I think that would be the same for Trevor Lawrence. As the longer you stay in college football when you're that talented, it's so hard to stay at that level of people wanting to think you're the next coming of Joe Montana or something like that. One of the best players to ever live. The expectations are just always through the roof, and it's just too hard to bring people back down to a common reality. So when you play out your mind as a freshman, and you still have 2 more years to go, what more do you want from that player? What more do you want to see from him besides improvement and mechanical stuff? I think improving in mechanical stuff is why people stay for 3 years. I think natural talent, if you're that good, it will showcase really early on. And I think that's what a lot of people are seeing with someone like Justin Fields, who didn't see a lot of playtime in Georgia because he was behind Fromm. But a lot of Georgia fans at the time when Justin Fields left were kind of upset because they felt like they saw something in him that was really, really special. And he showed a lot of that special talent sort of stuff at Ohio State when he got more time to show that kind of thing. But at the same time, you never really know. You could say the same thing about Jalen Hurts to a certain extent. Jalen Hurts, not on the same level as those two in my opinion, but at a certain point in his freshman year, people thought he was a lock to be a first rounder. And then later on, things started to showcase and teeter off that he just wasn't as all cracked up to be in that limelight. And, people naturally diminish. People's draft stocks diminish. And that's just kind of where it's at. However, I think if the talent is there and the team is willing to build around that talent and not just plug and play him because they're too overconfident in their own abilities as GMs and scouts and things like that, then they can make some noise. So, Trevor Lawrence, I think he'll be good. And that's really all I have to say on that. And we're going to segue that into talking about some college football playoff championship game preview, and that'll be coming up right after this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
right, so coming right back in after the break, I alluded to talking about the college football playoff national title game. And that's what we're going to do. So, what do we have to expect to see in this national title game? I hope it's a fun one. I think it'll be one for the books. I really hope it's not one of those disaster scenarios where one team just decimates the other, because no one wants to see that. We saw that in the first round, and we don't want to see that again. People like competition, no matter what. Like, we don't like to see blowouts. I mean, if you're a fan, sure, but there's a certain point to where the blowout high kind of dissipates and disappears from the hype of the game starting up, people excited about it. And we want to see teams compete, because these are supposed to be the two best teams in the nation. So we want to see both of them play their best football, and may the best team win. And I think the best team in college football right now has to be LSU. But honestly, it's more close than a lot of people are starting to say or have thought in previous time. And I really think that people are sleeping a bit on Clemson just because of how dominant LSU has looked. But I think Clemson's offense is underrated, and I think Ohio State's defense is really, really good. So Ohio State's defense really did a number on Clemson in the first half of that game, and then there's a lot of, you can say fluky, you can say lucky things turn momentum around for Clemson. And big plays kind of changed the atmosphere of that game to where there was more things open. But Ohio State made a lot of things tougher on Clemson to score and to move the football down the field. And LSU's defense is not Ohio State's defense. It's not the same. It's not the same caliber. They have some high draft pick, high lottery guys on their defense, but not everybody is like that. And we've seen this season that they can give up some points. Granted, a lot of those points came during garbage time where the team was up by X amount of points and people were just playing, getting some stats up. But it's not always the case, and there's still tendency stuff that you do see in these sort of scenarios and situations that teams learn from and watch film and see what weaknesses you can pick apart. And I don't think Clemson is any slouch on offense, and they can be really explosive, and it's going to really test LSU's defense to the brink, to the peak of their powers, if they can actually slow them down. And on the other side, Clemson's defense is really good, and they gave Ohio State a run for their money at some points, and Justin Fields didn't look comfortable all the time in the pocket trying to make plays and trying to read the defense. And not to say that Ohio State's offense is as good as LSU's. I believe LSU's is really dynamic and really a lot better, but it's not that much better. Ohio State, there was a point in time where Ohio State was the best team in college football by far, through rankings, through statistics, through analytics. They were, and LSU was still climbing up to prove that they might be able to challenge someone like Ohio State. And Ohio State's offense is no slouch. Ohio State's offense is really good. It is top 2 in the country, really. And we have to look at that and make sure we remember these things for when the game starts and stuff isn't working as well. Plus, everybody's going to be on edge. It's the national title game. Everybody comes out tight. It's win or go home. Winner takes all. Apex Mountain game. So many things are... There's so many stipulations upon this game besides just winning. Winning for Clemson here means a lot. For Dabo Swinney, means a lot for Trevor Lawrence, who already has a national title, who can cement his legacy even further and support these claims that he might be the best college football player we've ever seen touch the leather, touch the pigskin. And on the other side, you have someone like Joe Burrow, the Cinderella story, the guy that came from nowhere, the Ohio kid who came to the Bayou and with Ed Orgeron has led one of the greatest stories in American sports in the last X amount of years. And this is the only way to finish it off right is to win. And if he wins it, not only does that cement that he's going number one, I mean, there's really no question that he's not going number one at this point, but it would add to the legitimacy of its claim. It would legitimize LSU as this whole run, this whole year was for real. There was no fluky stuff going on. There was no fluff. They were the best team in the country. And that's a lot riding on that game. And I think nerves will get the best of somebody. I don't know who it's going to be, but everybody gets nervous in title games. The fans get nervous. The coaches can get a little tense with the play calling. They can be weird. The players definitely get nervous. It takes like a quarter. It takes like a quarter or so, or like at least a possession. It takes an offensive possession to really get back loose and remember that it's just a football game. And no matter what people tell you, like, oh, preparing like it's any other game or any other way that we do normal to prep for a game, it's a lie because people are human beings. I remember Bill Simmons, he was talking about how in basketball, game sevens are usually terrible because everybody's so tense. And I think that probably goes for any other title game or any other big match to where, you know, it's very hard to stay sharp in a high pressure situation like that. It's really tough, especially if you haven't been there. And Trevor Lawrence, quote unquote, has been there. And I don't know why I added the quote unquotes, but because he has been there. And I think really it is the same thing that I spoke about when they played Ohio State. Experience matters a whole lot. And when you have been to that side of the mountain before, you've been that high, you've seen the ups and downs of what a championship run can look like. You know what it takes. It's not going to affect you as much. So I kind of expect LSU to kind of come out a little tight. And I could be wrong. I like to be wrong. I like to see LSU come out as strong as they could ever be. But I don't know. I don't think Clemson comes out in this game and doesn't look good. I think Clemson will look good at this game. I think the pressure is really a lot. There's a lot more pressure on LSU to finish out this Cinderella story than there is on Clemson. I think that's just the end of the day. That's just how Clemson has rolled all season long. People weren't paying attention to them because of the conference, the strength of schedule, and then all of a sudden they're back into the playoffs and they're winning games, and now people are looking at this as LSU's game to win or lose instead of, you know, Clemson's time to shine, to reign what they believe is theirs, which is the national title, championship belt, and hold on to it. So we really don't know where that's going to lead them. I'm really having a tough time picking who's going to win this game. I think it's going to be LSU just because I think the firepower, eventually they'll get it going, and Ed will have them as prepped and prepared as he possibly can, and I think he'll do a good job. But at the same time, just a lot of pressure. You know, the Saints didn't do too well. The Pelicans, Zion's still not there. LSU, there's a lot riding on Louisiana sports fans for this championship to come through. And that's a lot of local pressure. So you never really know. But that's really all I have to say. I just hope it's a good game. I can't wait to see it and watch it, analyze it, see all the hot takes. It's just going to be an exciting game. And that's really all I have to say on that. So we're going to take another last final break before we head into the final discussion, which will be a little bit more fun. And it's something that I also enjoy talking about, probably too much. And that's food. That's coming right up.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, so before the break, we were talking about some national title stuff. Who I think might win the game. Who, if Clemson can kind of pull the upset, are they an upset? Waiting to erupt? Are they the underdog? I'm not too sure. I haven't looked at the odds, but the real decision making comes here. So, what are the best food choices for hosting a party or having a social gathering for the game or just watching the game by yourself? What are the best food choices? I'll tell you what's not. First, this is what I don't like to see ever. It's the worst things you can do. You can't have things that are too bready because people get too full. And usually there's people drinking. There's, people enjoy nice beverages. And you just can't have things that are too bready. So pizza's got to be out of there. Can't have pizza. Especially if it's like one of those thicker crust pizzas. You can't do it. It's a no for me on that one. It's too much sauce. It's just too much commitment for a pizza. You can't be committed to pizza. Because then there's so many boxes and then not everybody eats the same pizza. So then, you got to ask around, well, this guy eats pepperoni, this guy is vegan. You need a vegan pizza. This guy is allergic to mushrooms, can't put mushrooms on the pizza. The guy that likes pizza but doesn't eat cheese, so he's lactose intolerant, can have lactose-free pizza. All that stuff. So pizza's got to be out of there. So the first one. Number two, that just doesn't need to be involved in the discussion at all, probably has to be those little mini sandwiches, like finger food sandwiches that are kind of closer more to hors d'oeuvres rather than, sliders. Sliders are cool because I feel like you need more of a warm food item. Sliders are warm generally because they're like burgers. You can't have cold cuts. Like, you can't have a cold cut sandwich. You can have like a piece of ham and turkey the size of a folded up dollar bill with a toothpick to hold it all together, and I feel like I'm eating like a king waiting on this game. It's just not gonna work. No, not gonna work. So what does that really leave us at? I don't know. Actually, I do know. I have a few. I think you gotta have something for a wide variety of people first, that people will gravitate to, some easy people pleaser stuff, and then you get into the nitty gritty of what makes this the place to be at, the specialty dishes, the things that people can be like, leave the party and be like, man, that thing right there, that was the bomb. Only so and so could make that. Who brought that to the party? So, hear me out. If you want to do some razzle dazzle stuff, you got to be able to make something that really, really is easy to make for you, but you can add the extra oomph. You can go the extra mile with it. You can push it and to be something even greater. So I'm a fan of potato skins being on the menu, and I don't eat them very often. I'm not a big potato guy overall. However, a nice loaded potato skin dish on a college football playoff day, I'd eat that all day. I'm at this point, I'd be committed to the carbs. I'd be carved up at that point. So give me the cream cheese or the sour cream, the bacon, the cheese, which aren't really high in carbs as much as you think, but the potato definitely is. And the potato skins, and fry them up the best way. Cut the little green onions, and you get or the scallions, and you get really gritty and that kind of stuff. People love that sort of thing. Add some chili, potentially, and then you got yourself a hearty meal. That's plate number one. Because you got to have a plate for at least the first 2 quarters. You can't have, or you can have up to 2 to 3 plates. You got to have one for pregame. People need to eat before the game starts. For all the yelling, all the crying about the ref stuff, all that, and it has to be done first plate in beforehand. Then you get into the pledge of the anthem plate, I call it. So you have it next to you, the people that stand up when the anthem is doing it, when it's going on, and you probably have the plate on your lap or something because you feel like it's not that deep in your own household, or however you go about it. But there's definitely will be a plate around you during the national anthem, and then once it's done, you commence the second plate dine-in experience. So after that second plate, you got to slow down. You got to either drink some water or drink whatever you're drinking to wash it down with, and remember where you are at in your age. I'm at the point in my life to where I just can't eat everything and anything and feel good the next day. So you got to remember that this may be your cheat day, or this may be the day you just don't care about, the thickest of health. You only live once, right? So, but you also have to remember that you have to wake up tomorrow. Like, this is not a national holiday. You do have to go to work tomorrow, or you have to live your life tomorrow. And you can't live your life if you feel like you have a rock in your stomach for the next 8 hours and you're not feeling good. So you got to slow down. You got to be able to pace yourself. You don't want to eat everything under the sun. Next food item that I feel makes every holiday party, every sports gathering, everything better. You got to have wings. Wings is the common man's food, but it's also the rich man's luxury. Take that for what you say, but wings are the best choice on the planet for anything that you are not sure what to get. They are the perfect finger food. They are the perfect food to when you have nothing but sides and you have no idea what to do for the main dish. It's just chicken, man. You can bake it, you can fry it, you can deep fry it, you can bread it if you feel like doing that. You can bake it. There's just so many options. And then you just sauce it up. The sauce is where it changes. It's not just chicken anymore. It's a meal. It's an experience. So you got to get the lemon pepper going. You got to get the hot sauce going. You got to get the honey barbecues if that's your thing. The garlic parmesans if that's your thing. You got to have it going. And party wings are always a good option to have. And it should be a staple in American food going society, in my opinion. And then I'll give you one more that I feel it's really necessary to shake things up. And that has to be, I'll give you one bonus one. Nachos are just it's just a party food. Nachos are chips and dip. You got to have that. Now, depending on the dip, so like a Rotel dip or a 8-layer bean dip, or a mixture where you put like the ground beef or ground turkey within your Rotel dip, now that's when things start to get crazy. However, I'm just throwing out the curveball that a nice fruit plate is never a bad thing. People are like, who's eating that? Listen, people get tired of the grease at some point. That's usually around when the third plate time comes in, right at halftime, where you're thinking about going back to the nachos, but then you remember that you're not 20 anymore. You're not 18 anymore. You can't just keep eating on all this greasy food and expect things to work out for you. So you got to add some fruit to your diet to make you feel just a little bit better, to go along with all the heavy calories that you embark on this food and football journey. And that's where I'm going to leave today's podcast off. Thank you for listening to the College Football Podcast hosted by the GSMC Podcast Network. I please encourage you and would like you to go rate and review our podcast on any platform that you choose to listen to us from. And please remember to follow us on social media for all updates on the podcast and any other interesting content coming from the GSMC Podcast Network. And that'd be on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I've been Ethan Orfe, speaking for the GSMC College Football Podcast. I hope you all have an excellent day, and I hope your Monday ends up being as everything you want it to be. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From football to basketball, baseball to MMA, and even soccer. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast.